Hello, my name is Alessandra Guzman. My partners are Alyssa Longstreet, Mackenzie Neville, and Jack Zweber. Our project is on the Muslim Middle Eastern Americans, also known as MENA SWANA, an acronym for Middle Eastern and North African, as well as Southwest Asian and North African. Who are Muslim MENA SWANA people? While MENA is more widely recognized, SWANA is increasingly preferred due to its decolonial nature, highlighting the diversity of communities within the region and avoiding Eurocentric connotations associated with Middle East. The term Middle East is often considered a product of European colonialism, dividing the region based on its geographic position relative to Europe. MENA communities represent all people with Middle Eastern and North African descent. There are currently more than 5 million MENA Americans living all over the U.S., with the largest concentration of MENA population living in California, New York, and Michigan. Islam is most widely followed religion in the Middle East. About 20% of world's Muslims live in the Middle East, and about 85% of people in the Middle East are Muslim. Islam is a monotheistic religion, teaching belief in God, Allah, and based on the Quran. The misrepresentation in the media. Representation of Iranians or anyone with MENA heritage has historically fallen short in Hollywood. Portrayals are often limited to painfully stereotyped characteristics, which Megan Stone, former president of the Malala Fund, described as negative, violent, and voiceless. Her study of a 2-year period between 2015 and 2017 found that not a single news story that highlighted positive coverage over negative coverage of Muslim protagonists. They're often seen as bad people in almost every film. The U.S. Census has historically categorized MENA people as white, which can lead to underrepresentation as well. When including MENA characters in primetime TV shows, when they are included, a majority, which is 78%, depicted roles of terrorists. Growing up, there was little to no MENA representation in the classroom, whether it be in films, books, and overall conversation. I don't believe there was a time in my childhood where conversation was brought up about inclusion in people's cultures growing up, and it's clear that MENA is still a heritage that is underrepresented in media, classrooms, and overall day-to-day. Here's a list of stereotypes about MENA and SWANA. The first one would be the Middle East is clearly defined place. There's no single universally agreed upon boundary for this region, and its definition often varies depending on the context. People in the Middle East live as nomads. Nomadism has declined due to its economic and political reasons, such as the spread of agriculture, the growth of industry, and the government policies. There is nothing but desert and oil in the Middle East. This is not true. The region has diverse geography, including mountains, fertile river valleys, and coastal areas. Everyone in the Middle East speaks Arabic. While some countries in the Middle East do speak Arabic, it's not the first language for a lot of other people in the Middle East. They also include Israel, Turkey, and Iran. Everyone in the Middle East is Muslim. While Islam is a dominant religion in the Middle East, there are also significant Christian and Jewish communities. Here are some misconceptions that I think are more widely known that are just not true. So one of the most damaging misconceptions is the idea that all Muslims are terrorists, or that Islamic teaching inherently encourage violence has been widely propagated, especially after events like 9/11. It's important we continue to educate students in our classroom about how harsh this could be on different cultural groups and how it's important we stay respectful of everyone, no matter the different opinions of the media. Muslim majority countries or communities are often portrayed as oppressive, particularly in the context of women's rights. The stereotype Muslims women are being universally oppressed, subjected under rigid patriarchal systems is common in one of Western media. I was not aware of this stereotype regarding Muslim women. However, no race or gender relies on being oppressed, and it's important we don't view a certain group such as. Lastly, another common misconception is that all people in the MENA SWANA region are the same. Clearly, no heritage or community is the same, and usually reduced to Muslim identity. This leads to oversimplified narrative that everyone in these regions shares identical cultures, traditions, and beliefs. People from MENA and SWANA region are often stereotyped as being predominantly immigrants or refugees, especially in Western contexts, where they are seen as outsiders rather than long-established members of the respected countries. I feel it's important we as students I feel it's important students in the classroom should be informed by us as teachers about different cultures and differences in religions. This could lead to being more knowledgeable and more accepting of people around us.
Dr. Mona Hanna. Dr. Hanna is an Iraqi-American pediatrician who is most notably known for exposing the Flint, Michigan water crisis through activism. Dr. Hanna's work in Flint also helped light a spark for cleaner or universal water and health rights. Dr. Ahmed Zawail was an Egyptian-American Nobel laureate recipient chemist who is also notable for his work in femtochemistry, which overall helped revolutionize many fields of chemistry and other sciences. Ralph Nader is an American political activist who is of Lebanese descent. He helped advocate and pass the National Traffic and Motor Vehicle Safety Act in 1966, which introduced many new features in cars to help keep our roads safer. Dr. Sabeen Mahmood was a Pakistani-American activist who founded T2F, which was a hub for conservations about democracy, justice, and human rights, and also arranged social activities to support these conversations. She also co-led protests against the Red Mosque. Leila Shawa was a Palestinian-American artist whose work often included themes of war, peace, and social justice. Her art is most notably credited with bringing much attention to Middle Eastern conflicts, as well as spreading awareness to Palestinian rights and the consequences of conflict with countries. Muhammad Ali was a Muslim-American boxer and activist who pushed for civil rights and was against the Vietnam War, and he also did not take part in the Vietnam War. He most notably spoke out against the terrorist attacks of 9/11 and helped the American people understand the identity of Muslim people, and he helped Americans understand that not all Muslims were terrorists.
The cultural traditions and religious practices of Muslim and SWANA students can influence their education in public schools in various ways. But before I get into those various ways, I first want to recognize how important education is in itself, as it plays a key role in fostering cultural pluralism within the classroom as it does anything. Only when culture itself is understood can differences be respected without sacrificing the connections that unite them. Because it is a small world after all, as you guys know. We share 99.9% of the same DNA, so there's no reason we should be discriminating against each other and acting like we're so different at the end of the day when we're not. So here are two common things that Muslim people often do practice. One of them is Ramadan fasting, and it's a month-long thing where Muslim students will fast from sunrise to sunset, from dusk till dawn, and this can impact their energy levels and focus levels as well as participation levels. So they may feel tired and weak due to the extended fast. And another thing that they may participate in is daily prayer. So they may need to be excused from class to pray, which could result in missing part of the lesson. So this is something that could definitely be talked about beforehand with the students and or families so that we can learn how we can accommodate for them so that they can receive similar education to their Christian counterparts. Ways we can accommodate these students are by, again, education is key. What you don't know, you don't know. Educating ourselves so that we can educate our kiddos. And we need to encourage open dialogue and not be afraid to talk about these topics, even if they make you feel uncomfortable. It's reality. We need to provide accommodations and offer support for religious practices like prayer times and fasting, and not make them feel as if they're not important, that their beliefs are not as important as their Christian counterparts. Because we did learn in the book that there's such thing as Christian predominance, where schools often overlook non-Christian practices. You know, we get a whole 2 weeks for Christmas, we get a week for Thanksgiving. A Christian non-Muslim student would not expect to be given an exam on Christmas, on Thanksgiving, on Easter. So I feel like it should be treated very similarly. And lastly, I don't feel like we definitely do, no matter what, we need to address bullying, because at the end of the day, we did learn that what you permit, you promote. Muslim students commonly follow dietary restrictions, one of them being avoiding pork. And I feel as though this is something that we can accommodate for with ease, as in schools, we do accommodate for other things such as allergies and whatnot. So we can most definitely accommodate with food as well. I found an article called Culturally Responsive Instruction for Holiday and Religious Celebrations by Cynthia and Giselle, where they had recommended a few things that we can do, put in our own classrooms to encourage cultural competence within the classroom and cultural diversity, because at the end of the day, it is a small world after all. So some things that we can do are adding visuals in the classroom that reflect Muslim culture so that we can learn about it. We can incorporate books with multicultural themes, which we'll get into later. We can explore themes that are common to all cultures. So students often have a hard time, especially young students, understanding differences between one another because they were just put into this world 5-10 years ago. So they only know what they've been taught thus far. So if we can explore these themes that are common amongst each other, that even though it's a different thing that another person may celebrate, we are still the same. We do share 99.9% DNA, as we know. We need to ensure major assignments or exams do not fall on religious cultural holidays, just like how I stated earlier, where, a Muslim's Christian counterpart, if that makes sense. Uh, Students who typically celebrate things like Christmas and Thanksgiving, we wouldn't be expected to be given an exam on Christmas. So I feel like this should be the same thing. We also need to use current world events when talking about these different perspectives, because I feel like students often will go, oh, that was a long time ago. That has nothing to do with me. But if we were to use current real world events, it would sink in more as to why those things are important. So some common misconceptions that really negatively impact Muslim students and can hinder their ability to learn is, one, that all Muslims are terrorists or support terrorism. Two, Muslim women are oppressed and are mistakenly believed to be forced to wear the hijab, and that all Muslims are Arab and Islam is a violent region. There's something called Islamophobia, which was the fear and prejudiceness and hatred towards Muslims, which comes from this miseducation. There was actually a small survey done on Americans that asked them, who do you think is more likely to be discriminated against? And Muslims did come up at the top due to things like this. So not only is this information extremely inaccurate, but it's really harmful. This misconception that Muslims are terrorists stems from actions of extremist groups like ISIS, which falsely claim to represent Islam, despite the fact that the vast majority of Muslims reject violence and actually advocate for peace. Another two are that Muslim women are oppressed and that all Muslims are Arab. So it's important to recognize that Muslim women do choose to wear the hijab themselves as an expression of their faith. So they may or may not wear it depending on if they want to or not. It's not necessarily a form of oppression. It's also very important to recognize that ethnicity and religion are not the same thing. Meanwhile, they can coincide with each other. They are not the same. So being Arab actually refers to the ethnic identity based on the shared language, culture, and heritage, whereas being Muslim is a religious identity. So you can be one, the other, or both, but they don't necessarily have to coincide with each other. This is a large detailed map about Middle Eastern and North African within the United States. And for any teachers in California, future teachers, it's actually really important to know this information because California has the largest population of Middle Eastern and North African people. So this presentation will be very, very handy to learn this information for our future teachers that have Muslim students in the future, because recognizing the significant presence of our MENA communities allows teachers to create a more inclusive criteria where they address unique cultural religious needs and ensure that their students from these backgrounds feel seen, respected, and supported in the classroom, just like any other student that of holidays we actually traditionally usually do celebrate. Create that inclusiveness. So I was able to find this amazing resource. So this is the Arab American National Museum. It's actually in Michigan, but it's dedicated to Arab American history, culture, and contributions. Good news is, though, you can actually book a virtual tour. So this is a great source for learning about the diverse experiences of MENA SWANA students and their impact on American society. The museum helps challenge stereotypes and promote cultural understanding. So some more information on Muslims actually on our own campus is the Muslim Student Association services. So if you would like to know more about Muslims and about people of other faiths in the religion of Islam, then you can actually go directly. There's an Instagram page right here, so I'm sure you can do an Instagram page. They have a room in on campus. These are some amazing people that you could talk to face if you're really someone that prefers that hands-on face-to-face connection such as I do. These are great people to come to get more information on that.
Next is some resources that we as educators can use to support our students inside the classroom. Um, it's important that we do our own homework, so to speak, to make sure that we gather as much information as we can to learn about the cultural aspects um, that we may need to use to change our education style or to differentiate in our curriculum so that we may best fit the needs of the students that we have inside the classroom. So today I'm going to give you some resources and some information about specifically about MENA SWANA students. So first, let's talk about communication styles. Arab cultures are typically considered high context communicators, and this means that they often convey meaning implicitly through body language, gestures, and context, rather than explicitly through their direct words. They also, as a culture, tend to value hierarchy, so like social order and respect. What you should know about this culture in terms of communication style is that they may sometimes circle around a topic or use metaphors and symbolisms rather than being very direct like Americans typically are. Um, they use more implicit, implied language than direct communication. They may also not look you directly in the eye when speaking, as this is seen as a sign of disrespect often in their culture. So that's just something to look out for. That it's totally culturally normal, and it might be something that you just have to get used to at first. Maybe help them learn how to better make eye contact here in the United States, since we tend to be a lot more direct here. But go slowly and be patient with them. And one other thing is that they tend to handle conflict indirectly. Saving face is really important. So it's very unlikely that they will directly address conflict, especially in the situation of a classroom, because of the social hierarchy. The teacher is considered an elder and, like a socially higher. And so they would be unlikely to confront you or maybe even like a bigger, older student. So knowing this will help you kind of help them navigate those, conflicts that they may have. How do we support this communication style in the classroom? We talked about that a little bit, but other ways are beware of body language and tone of voice, especially when making corrections. So we want to kind of be a little bit softer, maybe use the sandwich method for correction, which is praise, correction, praise, rather than going in very hard and harshly. They may also need to create strong relationships before they're willing to open up and share. So this is part of the kind of like being indirect in the social hierarchy. You might really need to work hard on developing that relationship with them and a strong foundation before they're even willing to kind of like engage and accept criticism, praise, or direction. Um, some other things, you need to make sure that you're setting firm deadlines and state non negotiables really clearly and repeatedly. And also, in conversations or answering questions when they tend to be more, like talking around things, you may help them guide them to shorten answers by using yes no questions when you need to get to the point faster due to time constraints. Another thing that's important to talk about in cultural context is learning style. And for MENA SWANA cultures, they tend to emphasize oral tradition and storytelling. Lessons are passed down through generations in this manner. Art is also a significant part of their culture, and they use it to convey meaning and to reflect many, many aspects of cultural life, including identity, spirituality, cultural values. So, both storytelling and artwork tend to be very intricately detailed. Um, this lends itself to the learning style of students to be both auditory and visual, which is helpful. It's not just one or the other. And in this next slide, I'm going to give you some exact details on how to support them in the classroom. So, using visual anchors such as anchor charts, diagrams, images, even videos. We could also add creative elements to a lesson or use art as an extension activity where they can kind of use that as an outlet to kind of connect the lesson since they do that so often in their culture. Also, because of the oral tradition of storytelling, it might be helpful to encourage open dialogue and group discussion whenever possible. Encourage perspective sharing and storytelling to help aid the students to relate the topic of what is being discussed whenever possible. Um, and of course, in order to be in a culturally sensitive classroom, we want to make sure our resources are matching what their social context is. We want to make sure they're seeing themselves reflected in the resources that we have. One of the best ways we can do that is children's books. So I've compiled a little bit of a list here. This is definitely not all inclusive. There is a lot of great resources, and in the infographic slide at the end, you'll be able to click a link to download a whole list of resources if you want more. This isn't enough, but we'll just go through a couple of them here. Of course, picture books are always great, especially in this says K through 3, but really picture books can go all the way up K through fifth or sixth, in my opinion. One of the most widely recognized one is Layla's Lunchbox. It's a Ramadan story. It's a great book with beautiful pictures, and it introduces them to the holiday of Ramadan, which is holidays are always kind of a great gateway because young kids always kind of connect to the holiday and celebration aspect of life. Um, and then we have some middle grade books and uh, some high school books here. Of course, the grades 9 through 12 books won't have that many pictures in them, but they go into more detail, of course, of like what it really truly is like to have a Manaswaman identity, and kids can really connect to that and understand what it might be like to grow up in that way. Okay. I've also compiled some lesson ideas. All the links here will take you directly to full lesson plans if you visit them. Um, a lot of our lower elementary lessons include picture books as well. So these are extra resources. But the first lesson idea for lower elementary would be perspectives through picture books. So the teacher would read the story The Arabic Quilt by Tab and O'Brien, and students will discuss cultural norms and how we can appreciate those norms of others. The book is a very beautiful book. It's a simple read aloud, doesn't take a long time. There's a lot of extension lessons you could also do, like creating like some kind of art project where with a quilt theme where everyone pieces together their own kind of s- picture to make a story of the whole classroom, which would be kind of a beautiful thing to display as well and connect can connect everybody together as a classroom community. If you click this link here, this is also a read aloud, so you could just play that as well. The next lesson is kind of for upper elementary, a little differentiated. The lesson is Understanding Arab Refugees. It's using another book called Stepping Stones: A Refugee Family's Journey. In this book and lesson, the students will explore what it means to be a refugee and how we might support them. This one is great because it kind of explains in a simple way that kids can understand the difference between an immigrant and a refugee. And a lot of our Arab cultures, this differentiation is important. A lot of them have come to escape something in their, not all of them, but many of them have come to escape something in their own country. And I think it's important to make that distinction. This is not loading as fast as I'd like, but it's very similar. It's a children's book with beautiful illustrations of kind of stones that come together to make a family. Again, extension lessons here are many and can connect it, like we talked about earlier, to some kind of art lesson as well, and your own storytelling about your own families. Lesson plans can be found here at the link below at the ArabAmericanMuseum.org. We also included a lesson idea for middle schoolers, and this one is an interesting one. It's called Heroes and Villains. Full lesson plans are also at ArabAmericanMuseum.org. But this lesson, they're going to talk about identifying some of the common stereotypes and myths that we see in American media. Aladdin being one of them. I think you can, if you look back, you can think in your own mind of how Muslims and Arabs are portrayed in American media, and it's not always in the greatest way. So students will begin to engage critically with popular media, and this will translate across all cultures. But for MENA SWANA, we will look at specific characters and discuss, what does that mean? Is this true across all people, and how that might make our MENA students feel. And then we have a high school lesson, and this lesson can be found on Islamophobia.org. I believe that is an extension of Teach for Change. It's like an initiative they have, but it will be a lesson about who benefits from Islamophobia, and we will learn this through role play activities where students will explore what individuals, organizations, and corporations actually benefit from anti-Muslim hate. And this is really interesting because I think some students don't really understand that somebody always benefits, or most times there's somebody benefiting from kind of the negative narrative that we have. So to explore that, who really benefits from this? And then they will use the information they gathered and from all of the role play activities and the exploring, and they will create their own PSA to teach others about Islamophobia. I think this is a really exciting and beautiful lesson. And again, at this website down here at the bottom, you can really find a ton of resources to help you. And finally, we have our infographic here. We've compiled a really detailed infographic, and I think can be like a one-stop shop for any educator that has Minnesota students in their classroom. It's got the current demographic data, significant holidays, the learning styles and communication styles that I just talked about, stereotypes and myth, and some leaders that we can go in and contributors that we can celebrate with our students to kind of show them diversity of MENA SWANA people in this country. And then the last page also gives that whole list of literature ideas for children and listed out by grade. So these are all the books that were on that original slide. and the lesson idea was with links, and also resources for adults as educators. A lot of great stuff about Arab American identity in the United States, and some media links down there at the bottom here for some PBS documentaries that you might want to watch, and a great podcast called See Something, Say Something that is covering social and political experience of the U.S. Muslims. So, if you have any age in a SWANA student, this infographic is, a pivotal resource for you to gain all the knowledge that you need to support students in the classroom. Thank you very much for listening to our presentation. And please look at the links below here too for additional resources. I mean, there's tons of great stuff on these websites: learningforjustice.org, teachmideast.org, and facinghistory.org. Thank you very much.